Blog Talk Radio.
And in those days there were giants in the land, and the sons of the angels of God looked upon the daughters of men and found them fair, and took of them wives, and their sons became of old Greek men of renown. So they have been mixing with us on a genetic level since the time of Enoch and Ezekiel's will.
Here on Earth we're intrigued by the sun, moon, and stars, and imagine there's got to be planets like ours. So conceive of a place on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose we lost. That indeed they believe that these might be our gods, or that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve and eventually reach what they seek and then solve all the problems of man. But they really don't know that they fall in the works of our hands are but just filthy rags. So we travel the lands to dig up our past. Time elapses and with it are much of the facts. Some imagine that God came in alien craft. They react in this way, they're so desperate for meaning and purpose, but satanic service. They know that they have evil motives. Am I making you nervous? I'm just scratching the surface. The lines from Ezekiel's will, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the lines from Ezekiel's will, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. In the blink of an eye, all believers will be raptured. Anyone left receives the mark or the capture. This leader will arise, famous origins are alien, possessed by Satan on the side of the Nephilim. Profess those who left held us back from evolving, and now that they're gone, we'll solve all of Earth's problems. The worship of any one God will be halted, evolving to gods and ourselves be exalted. They'll play on these lines, and in time they'll devise and arrive at a plan that will help hypnotize all the ones left behind, the spiritually blind. He's stolen their souls, now he's stealing their minds. It's already started, we're seeing the signs. Just study the word, prophecies all aligned. Now chop off the heads of all those who fight at one earth, one world. Aren't you excited? The times from Ezekiel's will, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the signs from Ezekiel's will, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. Where will you be in the year 2012? Are they casting a spell they're not ready to tell? It's time to reveal what they tried to keep veiled. Pure evil they hail and they sell it so well. He fell from the heavenly realms where he dwelled, a once beautiful angel that tried to rebel. Expelled from the light into darkness and hell, now a serpent and snake with reptilian scale. He wears a disguise with angelic wings and mimics the truth with a lie so obscene. He always repeats the same thing he told Eve, that you'll be supreme, a king or a queen, that you can evolve to an enlightened being, a god of your own that can do anything. He sees on our souls with this fraudulent scheme in so many ways, but it's all just the same. It's time from Ezekiel's will, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the signs from Ezekiel's will, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near.
Why hide yourself with, creating UFO crafts and things like that? Why that deception if that's indeed what's going on?
The creatures figured out that there was one way that they could frighten mankind, and that is to present themselves as technologically superior beings, some physical UFOs.
Why would they want to abduct human beings?
UFO abduction might not be caused by physical occupants, but from creatures living in perhaps what we would call another dimension.
Posing as occupants.
Yes, the same type of interfering, harassing, paraphysical creature in every culture worldwide.
As little as long ago, or as far away as forever, this is where we meet to celebrate what never was as it comes to pass. Hello, everybody. This is Garcia with FallenAngels.tv. It's September 4th, 2010. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a very interesting show, and I have as co-hosts with me both Alan and I believe Kevin is with us as well. Kevin, are you there?
Yes, Brother Z, I am here, and I'm very happy to be here once again with you on another broadcast.
Excellent. Well, I'm honored. This is going to be a really interesting show. We're going to be talking about the royals, the elitists, and their connections to the synagogue of Satan, the New World Order, the push for world government, the coming grand deception, all the things that we've been talking about forever long. But this will be specifically interesting because I'm going to be bringing forth some clips from a movie called The Crown Killers, which a guy named Chris Everard has done some really incredible research tying together the history of these fanatical royals and their ties to those individuals that have throughout history oppressed their people and have sacrificed and many, like Vlad the Impaler, Ivan the Great of Russia, all these different fanatical royals and elitists. And just to let you know, I just recently bought a book called Who Owns the World? And in the process of doing some video with Dr. Joye last weekend, which we shot about 4 hours worth, and at some point I will get all of that out and available to everybody and to the listening audience. But in that book I learned that Queen Elizabeth II, she owns 1/6 of the total land of the entire globe, discluding Antarctica, of course, because nobody's really down there, even though countries are fighting to stake out that land there now. But she owns 3 times, enough land that it equals to 3 times the size of the United States of America. And I was guest on a couple shows just recently on Royce's show, Paranormal Palace, and another one, The Unexplained World. And on both of those shows, I talked about how if she made it her objective to end poverty, that herself, just her alone, in her wealth and abundance, that she could do so with the stroke of a pen or the movement of her will, or but she could end the misery and the suffering of so many people on this planet. But we know that they're not going to do that. Yes, go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, I got, since you just made that statement, it just popped into my head that if she owns 1/6 of the landmass of the world, and if that landmass that she owns is in her name, or the crown's name, just imagine how much more land she probably owns under other, names, other pseudonyms and other aliases, or other people that have bought land on her behalf. God only knows.
Absolutely. And in fact, the guy that wrote this book talked about how he had to, go through all these seeming connections. But let's give Alan a chance to give a shout out to the listening audience, and then we're going to get into some of this.
Yeah, good to be on with you again, Kevin. Hello, Zen, and good afternoon, Fallen Angels TV, and good afternoon, world.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, always great to be with both of you brothers. I feel like that both of you are blessed in discernment, and the Lord, has brought a lot of us together in these last days, and we're all trying to do the work that we can to wake the people up, and it's very interesting, the times that we're living in. And a long time ago, well, this was back right before the 2006 elections, when Bush had already been elected to office again, and all the incumbent Republicans were about to be voted out. But anyways, I wrote an article at that time called Kissing Cousins, Staged Elections, and the False Left-Right Paradigm. Mm-hmm. And basically in this article, I released it right before the election so that people, could know what they were really up against. But I talked about in that article about how Bush and Cheney, even when he ran against Al Gore, how they're all tied and connected, that they're all connected by bloodline, and they're all cousins. And when Barack Obama came office, and he was about to be elected as well. I talked about how he also was connected to these particular bloodlines, even though he's African American or whatever. Everybody believes he's completely different and that he was going to be the savior for changes, but we all know that he's just a puppet on a string, just like Bush and the rest of them. And so you can look that article up if you want to read it. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I will play this clip, and then I'm going to get both the guys to comment, and we're going to go deep into this. But I've got several clips from this Crown Killers, which is going to blow your mind as to the connections between these families and how organized they are and how strategic they are in their marriages and in their alignment with power, prestige, control. And so they have utilized strategic marriage to give them the power and the wealth that they need to continue to oppress people all across the world. And so I'm going to play this one clip, and then we'll get both of these fellows to comment, and then we're going to continue on.
There are people who believe that they have a God-given right to rule over others. They believe that their outward appearance is superior to all others. They harbor selfish ambitions to be rich and to have power over what they describe as common people. They lie, cheat, steal, strangle, stab, and slash their way to power. They believe that their actual willpower, what the British occultist Aleister Crowley described as the will of Thelema, the royal will, must be obeyed. Literally millions of people have been slaughtered at the behest of the royal lust for war, and thousands of people have been assassinated so that demonic dukes and killer queens can reign supreme. This cabal of crowned killers use the global network of secret societies, loosely described as the Illuminati, to do their bidding and killing. The conspiratorial view of history is the correct view of history. Conspiracy to grab property, conspiracy to make illegal profits, and conspiracy to assassinate has been the driving force behind the royal political elite for thousands of years. Many people believe that conspiracy in world politics simply does not exist. But it is a provable fact that the royal political elite have committed murder to gain power over and over again throughout the ages. Many of these murders were the result of a conspiracy usually orchestrated by politicians and aristocrats serving members of royal families. The Roman Emperor Julius Caesar was stabbed to death on the Ides of March. This was a conspiracy. U.S. President Abraham Lincoln was shot at point-blank range by a distant relative of the British Prime Minister's wife, William Booth. This was a conspiracy. Every November the 5th, the gunpowder plot is celebrated. Guy Fawkes planned to explode a bomb beneath the Houses of Parliament. This was a conspiracy. In recent times, we have seen the last truly popular president of the United States, Mr. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, assassinated. This was a conspiracy. According to Muhammad al-Fayed, Princess Diana was the latest victim of a royal conspiracy in which she was allegedly murdered under orders from the British royal family. History teaches us that the royal elite have killed before, and it is most likely that they will kill again.
Now, I know when I first woke up to all, the New World Order, and the Lord started blessing me with discernment so that I could see through the truth of what was really going on in the world and how there were all these connecting links. One of the hard things for me to come to realization on was the fact that there is a global elitist clique of people that consider themselves as having the divine right to rule. They consider their families and their bloodlines as being privileged, and that the rest of us are useless eaters, worthless individuals, and that we need to be ruled over. And one of the other things that was difficult for me to digest in first coming into realization was the fact that they are indeed planning and have put into place an agenda to depopulate the planet and what they call the Great Cleansing. And those two things are hard for individuals that are first coming to knowledge about all of these things to comprehend and to understand and to take to heart and to act upon. Let's get Kevin to comment on this, and then I think Alan's going to go biblical with this with some passages. Kev?
Yeah, I agree with you also, Zen. It was a struggle for me when we went through similar tribulations when we first were woke up, and we started to research and uncover some of the layers to this Luciferian satanic onion. And it was very hard for me to be able to think along those lines as the elite do, because it's not instilled in us to think like that, to lose our humanity as these people do. Unfortunately, I was guided to the works of many, many different authors who do not believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ, however, put forth some very good information on the royals and the elite throughout time, not just the British royal family, but the 13 royal bloodline families that Fritz Springmeier talks about in his book, and the 13 Illuminati bloodline families. Very good book. People should read, take a look at that and read that book. And also there was a book by Alex Christopher, the author he was the author of Pandora's Box and Pandora's Box 2, and I was looking into, why the Queen was buying up a lot of property at that point in time. It brought me to this research, why she was buying up a lot of property in Colorado and just what's going on there. And in reading his book, I came to the information, that, and in his book Pandora's Box, how, we were really never free. We've never really been free over all these 220 years or from the British Crown. It was just an idea to make us perceive that we were free and independent, and that we really have never been free. When as far as this railroad and banking concerns in this country, this country were set up through a trust that was originally known as the Virginia Company, and there was a survivor of the massacre of royalty in France during the French Revolution, where Marie Antoinette and the king's son Louis' son Dauphin, who survived and was smuggled out of France, and he came here to the United States, where he signed a contract with that Virginia Company, and he came here to help businesses, especially banking, in the United States, and that deal would that everything would remain. The deal was that everything would remain under the British control or subservient to it. And that brings us right up into today, because we're still looking at everything falling under that same trust system. So back to the Crown and the City of London, which is an entity unto itself. And when my scope broadened and I began to connect all the tentacles of the Illuminati bloodline families, and saw that they were all connected. It didn't matter what what race or what religion or what country they came from, at the highest levels, they were all intermingled with each other. They were usually related to each other, and they all worshiped the same god, Lucifer. So when people, and they use religions and different ethnic backgrounds and diversities to pit us against each other, unbeknownst to us that it's really they're all just connected through their worship of Lucifer, and we should be connected to the worship of our Father, Yahushua, our Savior, Messiah, and Yahweh, and we're not. And when I really looked at it, it drew the line in the sand that there wasn't many enemies, there was one, just like the Bible told us. It was Lucifer against the precepts and God's creation, and it was pretty well laid out for me there. It's just it's so convoluted, the layers of the onion. It's just mind-boggling sometimes. But we're going to touch a lot of things, points of interest that people should research here.
Absolutely. And before we get Alan to comment, I'm just going to make this one observation: is that in this movie, The Crown Killers, it goes through, the different elites, and it doesn't matter, like Kevin said, what country they are king or queen over, that all these families are connected and tied together. And one of the interesting things that the movie did is it took photos of all these elitist families, and like Tsar Nicholas and the King of England, and put them side by side, and the family similarities. Even like today, it talks about how Bush and are their family related to Queen Victoria, and all these different monarchs and kings of these different countries, how they all look similar as well. But let's get Alan to comment.
Yeah, demonic dukes and killer queens. This is actually extremely historical and extremely biblical. These are the agents of the fallen nemesis of the kingdom of light, the social engineers that are facilitating scientific dictatorship we live in, that manufacture the reality of, say, 99+% of all people on the globe. These are, as Kevin said, the children of Lucifer, Cain's progeny. Their power is God-given. I would definitely agree with it, but it's from the God of this world. And as far as conspiratorial, I mean, that clip just barely grazed the surface. It goes hundreds of levels deeper into the supernatural, the genetic, scientific, on and on. And for people who don't understand that, I mean, right from the garden, I mean, Jen, if you want to comment, that's your realm, but right to Christ in chapter 4 of Luke, it's in 6, it says, and the devil said to him, all this authority I will give to you and their glory, for this has been delivered to me, and I will give it to whomever I wish. Therefore, if you will worship before me, all will be yours. Right to the revelation of Jesus Christ, the two beasts, again, the dragon gives his authority to rule and reign for the entire globe. Extremely biblical and extremely historical.
Yeah, absolutely. This goes all the way back to the garden, even to Cain, and again with the Watchers, and their invasion and how they interdicted into the affairs of humanity, how the kingship was set up on this planet, and how these bloodlines were given this divine right to rule. And it is given to them by Satan, because as it was illustrated in that story that Alan just brought to you, where Satan took our Lord out into the desert and asked him that he would give him all these kingdoms if he would just bow, but he said his kingdom is not of this world. And so let's go into the next clip, because this clip will talk a little bit more about the connecting links of these elitist families, and then we're going to go. The next two clips will talk about these families specifically, and about particular tyrants and what they did to their peoples. And then, of course, we'll get commentary from both Kevin and Alan.
History tells us that the German impostors who occupy the British throne have consistently tortured, illegally imprisoned, and even murdered, sometimes with their own hands, people who have criticized the monarchy throughout history. This film for the first time ever, exposes the murderous and, in some cases, downright satanic activities of the monarchy. For the crowned killers of Europe, torture, disemboweling, hanging, burning, strangling, poisoning, and killing in the most satanic manner is the order of the day. This is the modus operandi of royal families. For centuries, the royal elite have devised terrible punishments for anyone accused of treason. The monarchy reserved the most disgusting forms of torture and death for those who questioned the royal will. A so-called traitor would often have each arm and leg tied to 4 horses, which were whipped to gallop in opposite directions, thus ripping the victim into 4 parts, whilst still alive. Often, the royal elite would divide the victim's heart into sections and send these for public display to different parts of the country as a macabre warning. The British throne has been bathed in blood for centuries. At one time, Britain contained several small kingdoms. These small kingdoms, ruled over by an intermarried, self-elected elite, were gradually amalgamated into the single monarchy which rules over Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, England, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and secretly controls the United States of America. As each decade dawned, the most ruthless, cunning, and murderous monarchs assassinated the regional kings and seized their property. Over history, the most heartless, cruel, disgusting, dishonest, and psychopathic royal family would triumph, eventually establishing a global empire where ordinary people are crippled with taxes demanded by a monarchy living on the other side of the planet. The so-called British Empire, which at one time included Hong Kong and India, was created by blade and bullet. The so-called royal family which triumphed is basically German. They are seated on almost every throne in Europe. They are the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha-Battenberg bloodline, which often intermarries with the Hesse-Kassel German nobility and claim Jewish descent from the royal house of David in ancient Israel. They raise their children without love or compassion, breeding each successive generation to be at the head of a military establishment who keep an angered peace by use of fear, surveillance, and war. By the 1600s, the thrones of Europe were mostly occupied by Germans, which had super wealth, earning vast profits from peasant labor, outright slavery, and the international opium trade. This Germanic family, known as the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, the Schleswig-Holsteins, the Habsburgs, Romanovs, and House of Kassel-Hesse, shared the same tiny genetic bloodline. This can clearly be seen in a photograph of the British King George V standing beside Tsar Nicholas of Russia. Queen Victoria is considered the most British of all queens. Her husband was German, and she wrote letters of state in German. Contrary to what the royal spin doctors have written in the school history books, Queen Victoria was not popular. She was often hissed in public, and there were no less than 7 attempts to kill her. Keeping the populace ignorant, using adults and children alike as virtual slaves in workhouses, providing no adequate protection against hypothermia, working every man and woman to exhaustion, and imposing a crippling poll tax was the modus operandi of Queen Victoria and all her relatives sitting on the thrones across Europe. So-called Victorian values allowed children to be used as slave labor. Inhumane slums and widespread poverty was common across the whole of Europe right up until the 1970s. Even now, in the 21st century, large numbers of British people live in concrete boxes without adequate education, and therefore unable to find a profession to lift themselves out of poverty. There are as many homeless people in Europe today as there were 50 years ago.
Two things of interest with that particular clip. One of the things is, I don't know if you caught this, but it was talking about how they raised their children to be cold and calculated and without love. The second is their modus operandi of how they oppress the people, pretty much give them slave wages and pretty much treat them as slaves, give them little accommodation and work them to death. And that, in fact, this particular family of elites did that to their populations all across Europe. One of the things that we're going to be doing as a follow-up to this particular show, and I know Kevin will be really excited about this, is we're going to cover how these elitists raised their children. And two of the people that we're going to bring forth information from are ex-Illuminati, one, Arizona Wilder. She was Mother Goddess and part of these Illuminati cliques and families and fought hard to get out of it. And she discussed in several presentations, video presentations, how she was raised and the kind of torture and the kind of manipulation and deception that she had to go through in being part of these families. And then we'll bring also information forward from a lady named Savali, which is not her real name, that's her pen name, but she had done a series of interviews with Greg Zemansky, an investigative journalist with the Arctic Beacon. And in a couple radio interviews, he discussed with her particular upbringing and how she, also had difficulty breaking away from these particular Illuminati families. But, Kev, let's go to a comment from you, and then we'll get Alan to comment.
Yeah, I'm very excited to hear that Zen Arizona Wilder just happened to be up on my screen. And for the folks who are not familiar with Arizona Wilder, she conducted human sacrifice rituals for the Illuminati elite for decades. And, she went on to say in her interview with David Icke that, that included the British royal family, George Bush, Henry Kissinger, and a stream of world-famous names. So I'm happy to hear that. We'll be bringing up she's very, she really talks about their obsession with interbreeding, and they believe that they preserve their genetic structure that way. That makes them superior above us. But, Kathy O'Brien would be a good one to tie in with that, too, Zen. In her book, Transformation of America, she had some real, fantastic things to say as far as their ritual and their symbolism that they use in their mind control techniques. But, that last little clip you played, as far as, you can think back throughout the Bible and the story in the Bible, and you'll see that that rulers of the world throughout the written word have pretty much made it on the back of the peasants or the underlings, the chattel that these elite treat us as. And once you look at powerful rulers throughout history, written history that we can research, you'll see that it's the same story carried out over and over again. The power eventually corrupts even the good ones that started out with good intentions. Satan uses some of those seven deadly sins and most important sins that God tells us not to get involved in, and he uses those as cracks and doorways to get into these people and eventually corrupt and possess them. And unfortunately, these people have just their families and their bloodlines have just come to give up and not ask for forgiveness and just not even try to turn to Yeshua for forgiveness, and they're so completely and utterly enthralled with their God that they worship Lucifer that they're just so far gone they just can't turn around. Some of them do break free once in a while. Mr. Schnoblin used to do some work with the Illuminati and rituals with them too. Bill Schnoblin, I know you're familiar with him, and it's just there's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of researchers out there who have been looking at this for a long time, and it's just beautiful to see that we as believers in Yeshua, Savior, Messiah, and Christians, that we can really tie it and see the connection is ultimately Lucifer at the top of the pyramid.
One of the things that is interesting about these ex-Illuminati members coming forward is the horrific accounts that they give of their eyewitness and first-hand experience of being tortured by these elitist families and how cold and calculated and cruel they are, even to their own children. And so if they're doing things like this to their own children, then you know that they cared nothing about the masses or the common good, the well-being of all people everywhere. Alan, let's get you to comment.
Yeah, that clip had mentioned that they're cloaking themselves as part of the Davidic tree, but really, like you mentioned earlier, then this is the synagogue of Satan of Revelation 2:9. Let's say they're Jews or not that are lying. These are the reptilian shapeshifters like Arizona Wilder testifies to. It's extremely biblical. We're going to go deep into this in the book that we're doing. This is a pre-birth devotion to the dragon and a spirits through the trauma-based mind control and an opening of doors through, pain, torture, and abuse for an indwelling of reptilian spirits, which they have a genetic predisposition to from their lineage of Cain. This, again, is the kings of Psalm 2 that set themselves, the rulers that take counsel against the Lord and his anointed, who first is Christ and also is us. And they want no bonds or cords, put upon us. But, yeah, again, our Father is in heaven laughing in derision at them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for the listening audience, always remember that our dad can beat up their dad, so and we win in the end.
Well, what's funny what Alan just said there, then, and I wanted to not let it go by with people just thinking that it's just a statement when he mentioned about them shape-shifting into reptilian form. And you'll see that throughout the UFO and abduction phenomena and throughout ancient sightings. They always refer to these beings as reptilian, and the same thing with the people in UFO abduction cases, that these beings shape-shift into reptilian form. So let's just not think it was David Icke being crazy. This is something that was talked about before David Icke or anybody else ever mentioned it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting and, again, another touchy and contentious area for us to go into. But, of course, we bring out everything on this particular show and have a platform for truth on all sides, no matter how strange it is. If it's the truth, we're going to bring it out. And one of the things that is of interest, and it's going to come up in another clip, but I had recently done a show called The Testament of Solomon, and I did that with Alan, and I was talking about the Goetia, and this is of interest, and it connects to what you were just talking about, Kevin, with these particular royal elitists and how they're often connected to these reptilian shapeshifters and also to those particular beings that are hybrid, that are part human and have either crocodile's heads, raven's heads, as predicted on the Egyptian, in their hieroglyphics. Well, the thing that is of interest, if you study the Goetia, which is the Lesser Keys of Solomon that the Freemasons, the Knights Templar, had found when they were excavating the temple, is that it gives an accounting of the 72 principal demons of this particular planet and that are over different languages and bloodlines and people. And these particular demons are, they can come in the form of the man, but they also come in a hybrid form as well. And in the Goetia, it gives a description of each one of them. And each one of these 72 principal demons, they have other legions beneath them, but they also have royal titles. Like the first one is called the King of the East. Many of them are marquises and dukes and earls. And so I think it is connected to how you were talking about that these people that are in these royal elitist positions, how they give themselves over to these demon-possessed and these reptilian beings, and how they become intermarried and of common thought and common body. And what was interesting to me in the whole Goetia is that it gives an account in the description, and you can go through and read, and often you'll see that they either have serpent tails and human bodies or, whatever, but there is many accounts of these beings looking like reptilian beings or creatures, and that's also for those that aren't tried and tested in this particular field and research and work. That's one that will blow your mind as well, and that's why we're going to bring forth, the testimony of Arizona Wild and these other people, because they tell you inside account, and it's not just giving you hearsay testimony, but this is from from them. But we're going to go into this third clip. I did extend the show, so we've got plenty of time, I believe, to cover what we're going to need to. So we'll do this third clip, and then we'll get commentary again.
Today's royal family is in power due to the bloody, horrible, murdering activities of their forefathers. By the second half of the 16th century, the major bloodlines which sit on the thrones of Britain and Europe today were already established. One of the most vicious crowned killers was Tsar Ivan IV of Russia. His mother fell foul of one of the most common forms of royal assassination. She died of poisoning when Tsar Ivan was just 8 years old. The young Tsar took great advantage of his royal will, what Aleister Crowley described as the royal thelema, a Greek word for willpower. All monarchs can exert their will and decree any act, even murder and rape, and act above the law. When he was just 9 years old, Tsar Ivan started torturing animals. This is a practice which is continued in ritual form amongst initiates of the Ordo Templi Orientis, a secret Masonic academy previously headed by Aleister Crowley. By the age of 10, Ivan, Tsar of Russia, would personally oversee the torturing of so-called political prisoners. These were people who had merely been critical of his power. He committed his first rape at the age of 11. He was crowned in 1547 and diverted public attention away from their own abject poverty by entering into war with Poland and Lithuania. Tsar Ivan took thousands of prisoners and personally supervised their torture, often devising the most wicked torture techniques himself. Tsar Ivan positively relished the screams of people as they had their eyes torn out. Women and even children were disemboweled, mauled by wild bears for his amusement, and people had parts of their bodies cut off and fed to his dogs whilst they roasted alive on a spit. Ivan also threw children into freezing lakes and rivers, and by 1569 he had extended his royal fortunes and property, with 60,000 people having been brutally murdered, many by his own hands. One of the most popular secret societies in Victorian London was the Golden Dawn. Amongst its membership taking part in magical ceremonies was the author Bram Stoker. His most famous novel is Dracula. The vampirish nature of royal killers is renowned throughout history. Bram Stoker studied the career of psychopath Prince Vlad Dracul, who ruled Wallachia in the 15th century. Dracul means dragon. Prince Vlad was initiated into the royal court of the dragon by his father, which launched the young prince on a bloodthirsty sadistic career which saw him employ every form of torture and even force political prisoners to eat each other. Prince Vlad took the greatest sadistic pleasure in watching women eat parts of their own children, or husbands eating their own wives. Every British and European monarchy has a history of murder by a brother, cousin, or wife. Even royal mothers have killed their own children. King William II of England was murdered by his own brother, who became King Henry I. In her fascinating book, God of the Witches, published in 1933, historian Margaret Murray revealed that King William II was a pagan warlock and had most probably been murdered as part of a ritual sacrifice to nature spirits who were invoked in order to assist the wicked royal dynasty of Britain. Pagan holidays, such as the equinox and solstice, play an important role in the royal calendar. In fact, the current heir to the British throne, Prince William, the son of the murdered Princess Diana, was cut from Diana's womb on the summer solstice, a date which has important occult significance. The reason given for the caesarean surgical birth was that William was delivered timely, so that Prince Charles would not have his royal engagements disrupted by the prince's birth. One of Prince Charles's royal antecedents was the cruel Angevin dynasty. Their offspring sat on the thrones of England and also ruled the illegally captured kingdom of Jerusalem. One of the counts of Anjou returned from the Crusades with a new wife. The so-called Crusades were perpetrated with the assistance of the Knights Templar. Thousands of Islamic men, women, and children were tortured and butchered whilst the Knights Templar ransacked holy places and slaughtered in the name of Christ. They were searching for ancient Kabbalistic texts whilst practicing a form of black magic, invoking spirits according to the teachings of King Solomon. Some Templars eventually confessed that rituals were often held where spirits were invoked and commanded to speak through shrunken, severed heads called Baphomets. The Count of Anjou returned to Europe with a mysterious wife he had met during the Crusades. She was crowned Queen Melusine and became known as the Devil's Daughter. Her children seeded the famous Angevin monarchy of Europe, who became famous for their violent tempers. One descendant of Melusine, the Devil's Daughter, was King Henry II of England, who imprisoned his own wife for many years. King Henry also murdered his own Archbishop, Mr. Thomas Becket. King Henry's son was the wicked King John, who became famous through the legend of Robin Hood. King John of England had his own nephew murdered on the anniversary of an old pagan holiday called Maundy Thursday. King John was a professional psychopath, ordering by decree the murder of hundreds of people. In May 1194, he had 300 prisoners beheaded in an orgy of blood. In the year 1212, a number with significant occult associations, he personally oversaw the hanging of 28 young boys in Wales. One of the most disgusting double murders at the hands of British royalty befell the young princes Edward and Richard, who were imprisoned and eventually stabbed to death by order of King Richard III in 1483. Dr. Nostradamus wrote a book of prophecies called Centuries, which was published in 1555. He describes events from the mid-1500s through to the end of the world, which is predicted to come in the year 3797. Catherine de' Medici, Queen of France, asked him to plot the horoscopes of her husband, King Henry II. In 1560, King Charles IX of France appointed Nostradamus as his court physician. Nostradamus accurately predicted for the French Queen, Catherine de' Medici, the death of her own children and other information which was used to bolster the monarch's hold over the peasant population of France. Magicians and mediums who consult with spirits have always been employed by the royal elite. In medieval Britain, Dr. John Dee was consulted regularly by Queen Elizabeth I. At the British Museum in London, we see the dark mirror which John Dee used to see or scry the faces of spirits. Dee's ability to communicate with spirits led him to be employed as a spy, developing psychic espionage techniques, which we now call remote viewing. John Dee attended Trinity College in Cambridge, which became a place where occultists and the world of spies were intertwined. Aleister Crowley also attended Trinity College. In 1904, he wrote an introduction to an ancient book of spells called the Goetia. Soon after, Aleister Crowley followed the footsteps of John Dee and worked as a spy for Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service, MI5. In medieval Britain, anyone found communicating with spirits was in danger of being arrested by the many inquisitions organized by the Vatican. The costumes and wickedness of the Vatican's inquisitions would later be copied by the Ku Klux Klan in the United States, who used the so-called Earth Salute, which was originally devised by members of the Victorian secret society known as the Golden Dawn. Hitler would also use the same salute and drop millions of leaflets quoting the prophecies of Nostradamus across Europe during his attempt in the 1940s to create a global Nazi superstate.
Now, that particular clip took you through the different ages and different rulers and how sadistic they were and how they were connected to these occultists, black magicians, sorcerers, Nostradamus, John Dee, Aleister Crowley, all these people that, were scrying, staring into water bowls or staring into dark mirrors or whatever technique they were using to connect and talk with these particular demonic spirits. They have always been employed by the royals and the elitists, who also have been involved with these particular practices. We know that even American President Ronald Reagan, they were part of, an astrology clique, and that the Blairs, they were all part of some occult practices. So this particular clip tied in not only the royals and these occultic and sorcerers and these particular black magicians, but notice how particular individuals work as secret intelligence officers, and how these intelligence organizations, MI6, the CIA, different intelligence services, how they are also tied to these Freemasonic, these elitist cliques, the Golden Dawn, all these different things. Let's get Alan to comment first, and then we'll go to Kev. Alan?
Demons speaking out of shrunken, shriveled heads. I don't know what's going on there, but again, this is extremely biblical. These people are doing this for a reason. It's not a pastime. It's not for fun, although that may be, a portion of the spectrum. You just go to even in, God's kingdom, Manasseh in 2 Kings 21, rebuilt the high places, built altars for Baal. That's a place where you bow before Satan. They worship the host of heaven, which is, the fallen angels and the powers and the principalities. And it said even a king of Jerusalem, and this is in the Bible, a king of God, a fallen king, is that he made his sons pass through the fire and observed times and used enchantments and dealt with familiar spirits and wizards. And he wrought much wickedness in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger, and so that he seduced the people. Just as a devout believer will petition our Father and pray and fast and move in works to try to pull down the seven spirits and the exousia, the power of heaven, these people petition their Father and move in certain works and acts of darkness to pull actual literal powers of darkness that the Bible speaks about into their lives to be, released, the unwitting, the innocent, the widow, the orphan, and especially God's people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did, that in that show that we did just recently, the Testament of Solomon, I talked about the Goetia, and we talked about Solomon and how he fell. And in that particular extra-biblical book, epigraphical book, the Testament of Solomon, it gives the account of how Solomon was given this ring and how he was, with that ring, he had power over all the spirits of the air, the demons of this particular world, and how he brought all of them forth before him to talk about their powers and how they are also thwarted. But one of the things that one of the demons had talked about in that book was the fact that Solomon would later fall, and how because of his lust for women and his marrying of pagan into pagan clans and taking these particular women as his wives and concubines, and then he set up particular temples and worshipped these fallen angels, these demonic spirits, and that's how Solomon himself lost himself and lost his way here in the world. Kev?
Yeah, it's just amazing. In that last piece there, you really see how the Lord of Death, Lucifer, rules over these people, and how bloodthirsty and murderous and demented that they are at the highest levels, that they're able to do the things on a mass scale, never mind in the small scale, to their own blood relatives and to their sacrifice to their father Lucifer. They worship him, and he requires sacrifice. And I think people, especially Christians, we forget that, because we're not required to sacrifice anything except ourselves over to Yeshua HaMashiach, and not to Satan, and given the blood of another god. And it's an important reminder for people to see, not to pass this off as something of triviality, because at the highest levels throughout the world, these satanic rituals are going on, folks. And the more you research it, the more you'll come to that conclusion, just as we have. I know all of us guys here definitely know that they are going on. And it's it's important to understand. I know it just boggles my mind to think that for a long time, even I myself thought this country was what it was, and that we really had won independence from England, when in fact we never did. But it's not just England. I mean, people need to remember, when President Bush was knighted in '93 by the Queen,
right.
HW was, and so when you look at it, you can bet all of these guys are doing their bidding, and it all goes back to their secret societies and the establishment of their New World Luciferian order. And it all leads back to those houses of the 13, 14, or whatever, however many bloodline families there are. There seems to be 13 when you really look at it. But and it all really goes back to the crown and of those European elites. And one of the systems that involves this here in the United States, so they can get their foothold here, was the Rhodes Scholar, was set up to achieve these things, to get their goals brought over here. And Cecil Rhodes set it up to groom people for this task, to carry that same New World Order thinking here into the United States, and it appears to be working out just as he's planned.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other things just with that clip that I want to emphasize and highlight. First off, when it was talking about Ivan and how he would roast people on the fire and then cut pieces from them and feed them to his dogs. And then also how he would get political prisoners to kill each other and eat each other. And also how he would have mothers, eat their children, or, fathers eat their wives. I mean, that's some pretty sadistic stuff. But one other comment as far as that particular clip, I don't know if you guys noticed or caught it, but what he talked about was that Prince William was actually cut from the womb in a cesarean section on the longest day of the year, which is also a day where they do the Bohemian Grove sacrifices on the longest day in the year in what they call the cremation of care. Go ahead, Kevin.
And it was in that tunnel too, that Pont d'Arme tunnel that supposedly has some symbology meaning too, the tunnel of Diana or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, and it was at a special point in between certain spots. David Icke talked a lot about that and in depth as far as his analysis goes of it, and there was a lot of symbolism and ritual in that whole Diana episode.
Right, the 13th pillar, how that used to be an ancient sacrificial place to the goddess Diana, all these weird idiosyncrasies connected to all that. But yeah, I thought that was interesting how William was cut from a womb. But let's go into this next clip, and I think the show's turning out really well. Though, really good dialogue, good commentary from you fellas. I appreciate you. Next clip.
Well, David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret, is one of my all-time favorite books. There is a section in there talking about a character called Pindar, who apparently is the boss of some of the satanic councils or satanic groups in America, and he also attends rituals in Europe. And according to some of the sources which David Icke used for his book, Pindar, this character, is otherwise known as the Marquis de Libu, or the Marquis of Libu. So there is a section in the book saying, can you give us any more information? And David Icke requests the reader, if you've got any information, then come forward. Now, a good friend of mine actually wrote a book called The Way of the Dragon, and it's an excellent book. It's all in French. And I have, French grandparents, so it's quite easy for me to be able to research ancient French documents. Now, Libu was suggested to me by my friend as possibly being an anagram of the old French term, which is Bilu, or Biliu. Now, Bilu is a plural of the word Belial, and Belial means demon, and Biliu is an old French term for plural, which is demons. So if Libu is an anagram of Biliu, and I believe it is, this man is attending the satanic councils. Apparently he arrives in a white Rolls Royce or some white limousine. And he calls himself the Marquis of Demons, or the Marquis of Demons. Now, that's absolutely fascinating, because many of the 72 spirits which we see described in the Howling, the Book of Howling, otherwise known as the Goetia, it's also known as the Book of Shadows. Many of the 72 spirits there, you've got all these instructions of how to summon these spirits. Many of them are marquises. Many of them are dukes, presidents, kings. I would say probably around a quarter of them have a rank of marquis or equivalent to a marquis. And if you conjure these spirits using the information which you find in the Goetia and also in other medieval grimoires, you will see that in your mind's eye these spirits often appear riding dragons or griffins, or they hold serpents in their hands. And at your command, they will take the form of a human being. At the magician's command, they will take the form of the human. But if you look at the sketches, which have been used to illustrate many, many different versions of the Goetia, you will see that many of these spirits are, they have royal rank, like a marquis or an earl or a duke, king, and there is definitely reptilian symbology, and if you command the spirit to take on a human form, it will do, and it will shapeshift. So I think there's many parallels with my research into the medieval grimoires and the Goetia, which dates back probably to Sumeria and Babylon.
To this very day, the British coronation is a bastardized version of the actual coronation ritual of King Solomon. King Solomon and his magical temple are the central foundation stone of world international Freemasonry. The Masonic rituals are designed to invoke a magical atmosphere in the lodge. Millions of Freemasons meet every week at lodges all over the planet, all venerating and singing hymns to King Solomon and spirits. Since the Dark Ages, misguided, selfish individuals have joined various cults such as the OTO, the Knights Templar, and Freemasonry in order to study different elements of ritual, blood oaths, and a form of the Kabbalah. The upper levels of Freemasonry require the initiate to memorize dozens of pages of text written in Hebrew and study symbols used in the Goetia to invoke spirits. The Templars and Masons have been led by senior royals since the beginning. The Masonic network provides the monarchy with an invisible worldwide cabal who have sworn allegiance to the monarchy and their Masonic demon god known as Yabulon. The entity known as Baal is named by King Solomon as the most senior spirit in the infernal royal hierarchy of demons. Masons swear never to divulge each other's secrets. Also, never to criticize a fellow Mason, even if he be guilty of murder. This provides the monarchy with a global army of Freemasons willing to do their service in secret to the crown.
All right, this particular clip ties in all these Freemasonic organizations that are everywhere. They're in every local town. You'll find a Masonic lodge. And what most people don't realize is what's really going on at these upper levels. They are, in fact, worshiping Lucifer, the light bearer, who brought wisdom here to the planet. And they say that the Lord, Yahweh, Yahushua, Savior, Messiah, that they are bad because they were trying to keep knowledge from humanity, and that Lucifer, the light bringer, loves us so much that he would sacrifice his part in salvation to bring knowledge to the people. I mean, it's warped and it's thwarted the way that they portray it, and yet there are millions and millions of people, men, that are part of these Masonic fraternities, organizations, that have no idea. And then those that are in the upper echelons that truly do know, they are dedicated and committed to this New World Order. They're committed to the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. They're committed to the New World Order and the bringing in the evil and the great cleansing that they have planned. Let's get Kev to comment first, and then we'll go to Alan.
Yeah, it's very interesting too. These European royal, aristocratic families, that you can see how they've interbred so obsessively, and that carried over here into the Eastern establishment families of the United States, which produced the majority of the leaders in the past and the present for America. So when you really start looking at it, and I started researching it, I found that pretty much every election since Washington has been won by a candidate with the most European royal genes, and I found that very interesting. That of the 40 some odd presidents, 34 or 35 have been genetically related to two people, Alfred the Great and King of England, and Charlemagne, one of the most famous monarchs of France. And it's when you look at it, they're the same tribe. So when I look at their rituals, if there was a better sponsor for reptilian, Luciferic symbolism throughout their country, it's definitely England. The reptile and dragons are everywhere. The coats of armor are everywhere. It's all over their architecture and their building styles and the clothes they wear, that they wear in these ceremonies. So I think when I dove into it deeper, I really found that the ritual is not just for, ceremonial purposes or anything like that. I thought it meant much more. When these rituals, I believe, are designed to rewire their energy fields or charge their batteries, if you want to say. It's because it's interesting how they do their rituals on key lunar, solar, and planetary cycles, and I believe that they've had the ruler of this world has great power and great knowledge, and he shares with them these times are really good times to do these rituals because of certain scientific factors that help with the changing of their consciousness, so they follow through with his agenda, and it just seems plain to me when you do the research that that's one of the key things is their rituals and their ceremonies are definitely for spiritual more than that is manifest into the physical reasons.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. All very good points. And I'm going to touch upon one thing that you said, because this is from an article that I wrote called The False Left-Right Paradigm. And it talks about the between these particular presidents. And, of course, David Icke has done a lot of work in this particular area. But two real quick passages from that article that I wrote. 34 presidents have direct familial relations and are bound by blood. What does that tell you about the dominance by certain families on the sphere of American politics? Quote, this information comes from Burke's Peerage, which is the Bible of aristocratic genealogy based in London. Every presidential election in America since and including George Washington in 1789 to Bill Clinton has been won by the candidate with the most British and French royal genes. Of the 42 presidents to Clinton, 33 have been related to two people, Alfred the Great, King of England, and Charlemagne, the most famous monarch of France. So it goes on. 19 of them are related to England's Edward III, who has 2,000 blood connections to Prince Charles. The same goes with the banking families in America. George Bush and Barbara Bush are from the same bloodline, connections to Prince Charles. The same goes with the banking families of America. The Pierce bloodline, which changed its name from Percy when it crossed the Atlantic. Percy is one of the aristocratic families of Britain to this day. They were involved in the gunpowder plot to blow up Parliament at the time of Guy Fawkes. So did you know that all 43 U.S. presidents have carried European royal bloodlines into office? 34 have been genetic descendants from just one person, Charlemagne, the brutal 8th century king of the Franks. 19 of them directly descended from King Edward III of England, and every presidential election in America since and including George Washington in 1789 to Bill Clinton has been won by the candidate with the most royal French and British royal genes. Alan, do you want to comment?
Yeah, this is a double front war in the physical and the spirit planes, and these duplicitous Satan freaks are taking the entire world to hell, basically. The entire populace is completely naive of it. This spirit realm and reality and even God's dominion over this earth, it's all based on legal rights. So as a believer, we vocally and emotionally, through repentance and give the Holy Spirit access to indwell, within ourselves. Further into our walk and what people should be doing, pressing into things like, spirits from heaven, like Isaiah 11, revelation, prophecy, wisdom, the gift of discerning of spirits, the gift of miracles, versus the other side, which is darkness. And some people unwittingly, even Christians, can emit darkness if you can see into that realm. But if you go to the deeper levels of, Lucifer's children, these people are aware of the demonic, they're witches, they're warlocks, they press into things like astral travel, they conjure and release spirits on God's people, on churches, on believers, on the world. It's a transactional warfare that, unfortunately, by, by number, mathematically, we're losing right now as far as, the world goes. And these are the lizards of Proverbs 38. In the NLT, it says the lizards, they are easy to catch, but they are found even in kings' palaces. NASB, the lizard you may grasp with the hands, yet it is in the king's palaces. In the Living Bible, this is my personal favorite. The lizards, they are easy to catch and kill, yet are found in king's palaces. What's happening here, if you were to whittle it down to one scripture, it's Isaiah 25:7. It says, and he, speaking of Christ and the Father, will destroy on this mountain the service of the covering of the cast over all the people and the evil that is spread over all the nations. So what that says literally, word for word in the Hebrew, Isaiah 25:7, it says, he will destroy from this mountain the covering veil's presence, the incantations of the hidden secret arts of the occult, enveloping the nations, the covering web that is woven and intertwined upon the heathen. So the word cast over there is lewd. It means hidden incantations, secret arts, and to cover over is extremely similar to the word enchantments from Exodus 7:22, which means hidden. So these people are not only, defying, damaging, and destroying the world in the physical plane, but at the highest level, everything is supernatural, it's spiritual. They're also involved in what's going on in the spirit plane, manipulating the entire world.
Absolutely. The eye at the top of the Illuminati pyramid, that's Satan and all these organizations, these Freemasonic, the Vatican, all these different organizations that are tied and part of this Illuminati pyramid without even recognizing or realizing. And you're right, the world is the world has no idea what in truth reality really, really is. And their version, their perspective on reality is so far from the truth that if reality did come into their lives and truth did hit them in their face, it would scare them, and they would deny just because anything that challenges their belief systems, they're programmed to deny. So, but we're going to go into this last clip, and then we'll get the fellows to comment. We've got plenty of time. So let's play this last one.
To the British royals of the Middle Ages, murder by magic was accepted as fact. Queen Elizabeth I and King Henry VIII ruled Britain at a time when the black arts of witchcraft and poisoning were inseparably linked. Across Europe, the monarchy was involved with one murder after another, many deaths attributed to a form of black magic, often perpetrated by someone within the royal court. In 1388, the Queen of Aragon was accused of the attempted murder of her own son by using witchcraft. In 1419, Jeanne of Navarre, the widow of King Henry IV, tried using magical spells to kill her stepson, Henry V. Jeanne of Navarre was convicted on evidence offered by her chaplain. Further revelations exposed the fact that witchcraft was being practiced right at the very heart of the royal court of England. Like the Kabbalist magicians, witches were also sometimes employed by the monarchy. Medieval witches would often make wax figurines resembling the likeness of the intended victim. The doll would then be tortured and burnt, often causing ill effects on the victims. It is claimed that this technique can induce an early death by heart attack or disease. King Alfred recognized the tendency for royals and noblemen to use witchcraft and imposed the death sentence for anyone practicing the black arts. However, his law went unheeded. By the late Middle Ages, satanic black masses were attended by royals and aristocrats in Vienna, Paris, Venice, and London. King Henry VIII came to the throne knowing that psychics, magicians, and mystics with knowledge of necromancy had been on permanent employment with the royal court. In 1538, Mabel Brigg was executed in York for trying to kill Henry VIII using the so-called Black Fast, where the sorcerer performs a hunger strike inside a magic circle whilst directing the wrath of spirits against the victim. In 1429, it was disclosed through letters written by John of Navarre that she was a member of a coven of witches which operated right in the heart of the English royal court. One of her fellow witches was the wife of one of her stepsons, Eleanor Cobham, who was married to Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester. Eleanor Cobham was arrested on the 25th of June, 1441, at the King's Head Tavern in Cheapside, London, and stood trial for witchcraft. Her husband was the heir to the British throne. Another royal witch was soon exposed, the Duchess Jacquette of St. Paul, who was married to another brother of Henry V. She stood in a witchcraft tribunal which heard evidence suggesting that she had ensured her daughter's marriage using talismans and black magic. A frenzy of satanic ritual was eventually exposed at the heart of the royal courts of Britain and France by several 19th century historians. Catherine de' Medici, the Queen of France, performed several satanic black masses for the benefit of the royal aristocratic elite. French author Jean Baudin wrote a book about witchcraft recounting that in the 1600s Catherine Monvoisin and the priest Etienne Guibourg performed black masses for the mistress of the King of France. The Black Mass is a satanic parody of the Roman Catholic Mass, often involving the ritual murder of a virgin. Aleister Crowley wrote extensively about ritual sacrifice and recommended that a child under the age of 9 of above average intelligence made the ideal sacrificial victim. Much to the horror of the 17th century royal elite, Etienne Guibourg publicly confessed that the mistress of King Louis XIV of France, Madame de Montespan, would lie naked upon a satanic altar with a chalice of wine infused with intoxicating herbs on her bare stomach. She would hold 2 black candles in each of her outstretched hands. The royal Black Mass, combined with a family tradition of cruelty and outright evil, would be continued into the 1700s by the aristocrat known as the Marquis de Sade. The de Sade family were members of France's oldest nobility. The Marquis de Sade repeatedly abused young prostitutes in his castle at Lacoste in France. He wrote about pornographic orgies and ritualized sexual beatings involving monks, priests, and even the Pope himself. Sade avoided a prison sentence by claiming insanity and spent most of his life in a comfortable mental asylum. In the asylum, the Marquis de Sade immediately began an affair with a 13-year-old girl called Madeleine Leclerc. Sade died in 1814. His death marked a new era of Satanism and murder at the royal courts of Britain, France, and Russia.
So that in that clip, it pretty much lays out how the occultism, the sorcery, the black magic has been pretty much indoctrinated into these royal families and has been made part of their MO, the way that they operate and that they work. You know, the royals, the elitists, they employ these particular people that have these particular abilities, and they utilize their psychic powers and abilities to get foreknowledge so that they can utilize that to continue in the agenda and continue the oppression and the control of the masses. And so you can see that through this series, the Crown Killers, the Conspiracy in the Crown, it's also called Murder by the Monarchy. And you can find this whole series on YouTube. I think it's like 7 or 8 parts, but it's very, very interesting. I recommend everybody to preview it, and because it gives such insight into how sick these royal elites are and how twisted they are, and how they even raise their children to be sadistic and twisted. And because nobody would believe that people would intentionally be cruel to their children, and yet these Illuminati bloodlines, that's the way they operate, and that's what they do to their kids. And we can see by their prevalence to pedophilia and to sleeping with children that they have no respect for the innocence of children. Alan, let's get you to comment, and then we'll go to Kev.
Okay, just to back this up biblically, this is 2 Chronicles 11. This is the wars between Israel and Judah that took place over what would be decades. You got the Bohm, and it says in 15, then he appointed for himself high priests for the high places, for the demons and the calves and the idols. So this is also Job. This is when God pulled back the hedge. This is what came in and took out Job's family, killed 10 of his descendants, his wife. This is what inspired the boils upon Job that were full of blowflies. In the Septuagint, it says he was a birth to monsters. This is the conjuring of spirits of infirmity that can be released on people. This is what possessed the spirit of Jezebel to slaughter the prophets after they had been worshiping the altars of Baal. This is a reciprocation, a legal reciprocation from the kingdom of darkness. And again, these people at the highest level are of and only of Cain's progeny. As you're seeing a reptilian tendency, you've got like an astute, dark intelligence coming from these people, hybrid fallen spirits as well, and an opening of themselves and their children, to further possession and empowerment of exterior, separate, otherworldly fallen spirits. These people are going to be, always be naturally minded, shrewd, carnal. You got like a survival-based instinct, greedy, opportunistic, prey upon the weak, just totally devoid of a conscience, empathy, and sympathy. They're going to control. Complete inability to love, individualists, hedonists. These are the psychopaths and the sociopaths that control this world, the megalomaniacs. There's a reason why they inbreed. It gives them a predisposition to possession, I believe through DNA harmonics. It's totally opposite to Christ and godly genetics and Adam and what was meant to be in the garden and what Christ's seed in us and his blood and his Holy Spirit will do. It's completely opposite, and foreign, and I don't believe these people can even comprehend any of these faculties, of God's people, like humility, love, truthfulness, empathy, fruits of the Spirit, self-sacrificial nature. The cross probably just absolutely offends these people's minds. It's complete inability to even understand it. To defend orphans or, give all, lay our lives down, is completely opposite. You're looking at realms of free will, genetics, spiritual oppression, and those that would inhabit either way, the Holy Spirit or these fallen spirits. They're looking at, psychotropic drugs, which is today's drug trade, which is also controlled by the elites at the highest level. Goes all the way back to the Book of Enoch, which speaks of roots and herbs. What they're speaking about there is psychotropic drugs, things like methamphetamines, cocaine. This is all, the fallen realm. I don't even believe that the people are behind this. It's from the fallen angels. Things like frequency manipulation, elf warfare and stuff can affect these things. And environmental and educational and experiential things like abuse can also, lead a person to either of these realms, but it really comes down to light versus darkness, spiritual power, genetics, and a war that's ramping up and amping up and is about to spill out onto the earth in the very near future in ways that we don't have a precedence for or an understanding for.
Because we have a conscience, it's hard for us to comprehend how heartless, and evil some of these people can be in these bloodlines, and it's difficult for us to put ourselves in their place and in their shoes. And when we do the show on how the Illuminati raise their children, and we bring forth the testimony of Arizona Wilder, she in this one particular series brings out how difficult it was for her in being abused and misused and mistreated by her family and by these elitists. How difficult it was for her as a child to maintain any sense of normalcy and to have any sense of well-being, that she was so tortured and so abused that really she had to create safe havens, and thus resulting in multiple personalities and the different things. And I know, Kevin, that you've done a lot of research into this mind control and the way they fragment these children and, pretty much program these different personalities. So, Kev, you want to comment?
Yeah, satanic ritual abuse is a well-implemented tool, and it has been for a long time by the higher elites. And I guess the easiest place for them to start testing their rituals and their abuse to see if it, in fact does have effect on the human brain and can they control it, was, unfortunately started with their own families, and it moved on to us. And now they do it en masse. And it's just, whenever we look at it, I mean, that last clip, it was talking about, them going to diviners and scryers and, psychics. And, we look in the scriptures and, and God specifically warned us, and he gives us examples with Saul and, and Samuel. And, we lust for power, and I think that's one of the main things why these people in the elite families, their number one sin, I would think, is the same as Satan's, was pride, and they just refuse to think that they are not the ones to rule and control what goes on, and they're not the judge and jury for all of us. They are so blinded by Lucifer's powerful grip on them that it's a never-ending cycle, and the only thing that can shut that door to the demonic activity throughout those elitist families is Yeshua HaMashiach and the claiming of his blood, which they seem to never do. And I think that as the scriptures show us, it's going to come down to many things, but the one ultimately will be those who claim the blood and those who don't. And it's pretty easy to separate us when you really look at the Illuminati and the God that they worship. It's a God of death, and it's blood soaked right from the start to the beginning. And I look to the heaven and I wait for the second coming with hope and joy in my heart that someday it will will end. And I think when folks listen to our show, they come away with that realization that ultimately we don't control anything except our beliefs, and He's given us free will to decide before it's too late. And boy, I tell you, when I really started studying the elites and just what's going on with the movers and shakers of the world, it broke my heart to see humanity to be able to treat other humans in the way that they do.
Yeah, it breaks my heart too. And I want to pray for those individuals like Arizona Wilder and Savali and Kathy O'Brien and all these, especially the children that are being ritually abused right now. I want to pray for their empowerment, and I want to pray for their protection, that the Lord can, lead them back to Him and embrace them and lead them out of these Illuminati families and away from the evil and the abuse, and for those children that are part of all this without willingness or wanting this, I pray that they can come out and find the protection of the Lord and somehow get into the fold and be led to the truth of salvation, and in accepting that, themselves inherit the blessings of eternal life and salvation that our Lord so graciously extends to all of us, because it's got to be just so much more difficult coming up in those bloodlines, and also, fighting off and everybody that you thought should love you, and those people that you wanted to trust and look to for support, and they're ritually abusing you or sexually abusing you. I mean, that's got to shatter a child so completely that, how they can come back from that and come back into the fold of the Lord. That's, man, what a journey, what a journey. And so I pray for all those individuals out there, and I pray and give thanks to the Lord and honor and praise you, Lord, that I was not part of those Illuminati families, and that I didn't have to break away from the struggles and the kind of scenarios and circumstances that those individuals are going through and having to break away from. And so let's pray for, the protection of Arizona Wilder and Savali and others that have broken away, and those that are continuing and wanting to break away and bring more information to us. I pray for all of them. I pray for their protection, and God bless them. May they find the peace and the grace and the comfort that they've been wanting all their lives. Go ahead,
John, I think if people just realize one thing about these characters and the Illuminati and royalty is, Yeshua pretty much told us He did nothing in secret. And whenever you look at these powers that rule the world, you'll see they do everything in secret. And we see the outward expressions, the black and the white in the square. We see the outward expressions for all the world to see as the Roman Catholic Church, through their workers of iniquity and the Jesuits that the crowns throughout time have inserted into the corruption of the Catholic Church, and therefore bleeding it out throughout the world as that outward expression, and also the inward, the higher, the darker expression that we don't see in their dark satanic masses that they do behind closed doors. And if we look at the way they conduct themselves in business, it's always a secret meeting, for the Bilderberger groups and all these different groups that meet, the Orders of the Garter, the Committee of 300. I mean, we look at all of these groups and all of these things that are supposedly doing things to better humanity, but we are not privy to what is discussed in these conferences and these meetings. We're not privy to anything that goes on in them without having to sneak in as spies and get this information. So I take it with a grain of salt. Why would these people, if they were not doing things behind the backs of the people and to not help humanity, but to control and to have power over it, That is the only reason why they don't let us privy to that information. And I think it makes it easier for people to swallow that these people, unfortunately, you don't want to believe that they're that evil. They really are. And I hate to say that about anything God created, but it's really. We look at the crumbling of the Catholic Church that's going on, all of the stuff that's coming out. The Father told us that everything all truth would come out, and we're starting to see all of this stuff. And people are reaching out and they're looking for what's going on, and we need you to understand, our listeners out there, that if you connect it to the Scriptures, the picture becomes clearer, and that's all basically we learned to do. We were going off on different rabbit holes and rabbit trails in the beginning too, but once we connected the majority of the veins of the web, and connected it to the Scriptures, we were able to clear up the picture greatly.
Alan, do you have comment?
This is what the Dead Sea Scrolls Damascus document refers to as the serpents being the kings of the earth. This is the wicked from the book of Proverbs. This is the way of the wicked is darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. They don't even understand that they're stumbling right now in the midst of eternity, most of them, unless they're at the highest level, and those are the unredeemable. It says they do not sleep unless they have done evil, and their sleep is taken away unless they make someone fall, in Proverbs 4. I'd like to speak to all these people, because some of them probably are listening. They probably find this humorous or use it for intel or whatnot. The Lord is a man of war, and he's coming back to tread the winepress, and your blood will be as high as the horse's bridle if you do not repent. The Holy Scriptures say that the evil will bow before the good and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. That's Proverbs 14. The question is, what do we do as believers right now? To listen to this and be educated is highly important. You need knowledge. You will perish without it. It will help you navigate through this. But if you sit and do nothing, all it will land you in is a situation that makes you more accountable, and you'll actually be off in a worse stance and position than you would have if you hadn't heard this. We are called to rebuke the wicked. The book of Proverbs says there are millions of children around the world right now that need our help. It's difficult to get to these satanic ritual abuse sites. Russ Dizdar says that there's as many as 4 million, according to certain psychological surveys and numbers, accepted by the Psychologist Association of America of these MPD. There's entire wards of these people, and most of them are unfound and lost. This is the Dark Awakening that Russ Dizdar speaks about. He's done some excellent work on that. There's people all over the world that need our help right now, whether it means interceding, getting another job, and giving, getting off our sofas and actually going overseas somewhere, save up 10 grand and go die overseas somewhere. That is noble. That is beautiful. That is Christ-like. To sit back and watch this in a stance of observation, directly you can pull from the Scriptures unrefutable. That means you do not belong to Christ, that you never did. If you don't lay your life down, it means he's not your friend. If we don't pick up our crosses and follow him, which is now, it's a contemporary thing. It doesn't mean in the future. It says follow him from the time you get saved. There's only so much of this you really need to understand and learn from, and you can get caught up in the kingdom of darkness and searching their hearts and their insight and laying down the gospel. So there's people right now that are listening to this that have laid down the gospels, that have laid down works, that are not working for the kingdom of light, that are fascinated with the kingdom of darkness. That's a negative thing. I've walked in that for periods of months, and it can be necessary and it can be a season. But if you're not attempting to rectify and get in the mix, take a stance and offensively, advance our Father's kingdom, and I'm speaking to myself right now, it means that we do not belong, that we do not add up. So the question is not what we know about this, is that what are we going to do about this? And the answer to that is in the Gospels. It's love, it's the poor, it's the lost. It's Christ's mandate. Has nothing to do with churches. It has to do with laying your life down unto martyrdom, selflessly pouring your life out.
Well said, Alan. That was really well said, and I would just add that the hour is definitely late, and that you might not have time, because I've read several stories about individuals that we're willing and wanting to repent, and we're always putting it out that they'll do it tomorrow, and then one day their death came and claimed them, and then it was too late for them. And don't be as one of them, because we are not promised any more tomorrows, and you never know when your final moments are going to be. And so repent now, get right with the Lord now. Kev?
Yeah, I agree. I definitely wouldn't want to be one of the folks in when Yeshua is speaking in Revelation 3:16, where he's talking about the lukewarm and spewing the out of his mouth. So I definitely agree with Alan on that. I don't want to be one of those ones that are spewed out. And so I'll make my stand here now, and people can call us crazy if they want to, but boy, when you start connecting the dots, it's harder and harder these days to call us crazy, ain't it, guys? I mean, folks are really, even folks that did call me crazy about some of my views and some of my brother Zen's views, and I'm sure Alan has gone through the same thing. They're now starting to come around, and it's a beautiful thing. I think it's the reward that the Father promised us. We didn't look for that immediate. We had to learn a lot of things in the grace of the Lord. We had to learn patience. We couldn't just jam stuff down people's throat and expect them to automatically snap out of it and come back to Him. And we showed perseverance and the willingness and the love to want to just keep doing it, even when we were being snickered at and ridiculed. And I take my badge with honor, and I hope that I could keep filling up some more badges. If I could touch one person to turn towards the Lord, I've done my job. But folks, you got to remember, on Zen's site, on Fallen Angels .tv, on his site, I posted that reptilian pact, that Luciferian Army Code of Conduct, and what's going on around us. The illusion is so large that it escapes most of our perceptions, and the few of us who see it and call out and stand on the wall, we're thought of as insane, and they use that to separate us on fronts and prevent us from seeing the connection between all of these bloodline families we're speaking of. And they behave and they still are behaving as if they're not connected to keep that illusion alive. And the Father is giving us knowledge and giving us the vision and the sight and the hearing and the ability to see what's going on around us. And if we reject that knowledge, He will also reject us, and I hope He doesn't, because Satan certainly wants you to not look around and go along to get along, and then you won't see the things that are happening as they occur, and you won't be able to prevent them. That's his biggest trick, and I just love what we do here, and I'm so glad to be part of it with you guys, and I think we've touched a lot of people, and I'm really proud of some of the stuff that we've done here. And this show that we're doing today, it's important to know that history and that story so you can see it for what it is and teach your children so they do not become prey to it. As Zen said, you never know how long you got here, so you have to make your decision pretty quick. When the time comes, and you don't have a chance to turn back then. So.
Our sister Nisi in the chat room, God bless her, she's been a long supporter of the show. She says, I've known and loved some of these victims of mind control, and most of them have committed suicide already. The ones that I know, the others have attempted many times. And so, once again, I reiterate the prayer for those individuals, the victims of this mind control, that they find individuals, people that they can relate to and talk with and speak with, and find, the comfort and the compassion that they'll need to get through some of these things. And like I said earlier, I can't even imagine what it must be like to come through some of these things, and especially to be so young and so devastated. Just God bless all of those individuals. We got about 7 minutes remaining. Alan, I'm going to go to you for final comment, and then Kev will go to you for comment.
We've said this before, and it's time to physically prepare. Just get a high-tech backpack as best as you can. Water purification is essential. That's it's extremely high on the list. A good pair of boots, a first aid kit. If you can, just rice up in Canada is cheap. I mean, for 20 pounds for $7, you want to be going and getting 100 or 200 pounds of that and some dry beans if you can. You want to be fasting for the gifts and to be stamped as a bondservant, telling your Father in heaven that you don't want to go free, to test you, that your life belongs to Him, that you do anything that He wants, that your will is His will, so that He will use you in this thing, and like Kevin said, not spew out of His mouth. He expects excellence because that's what His Son provided for us and walked in from start to finish. I'm not prophesying this, so I'm not prophesying this at all, but I believe there's a witness of the Spirit that there could possibly be a nuclear event in America. Again, I'm not prophesying that, but I feel God's hand is lifting off of America and that anything is possible, and God's not going to come down and tell every Christian that there's going to be, a nuke let off or a dirty bomb or anything like that. He's expecting us to prepare. Faith never just sits back and does nothing. It's always coupled with works and action throughout the Bible. I just want to speak to girls right now that are maybe they're like 20s, possibly 30s. You can do this. God wants to use you. There's a place for you. The Bible speaks about prophetesses. Holy Spirit led. I mean, you can even go out and fly our church's cars. Make sure it's concise, make sure it's biblical, make sure it's proper. But, ask God, what is He saying to these people? And go fly their cars. Who cares, man? Like, get in the mix. Like Kevin said, if we can only bring one person or influence one person, it means that we can stand before the mighty throne of God, before our Father and before Christ, and break His heart with our valor and our love. And be holding hands with just one of His lost children is exactly, in its entirety, devoid and completely standing on its own. Everything else is irrelevant. Were you obedient? Did you lay down? Did you work? And who did you bring with you? So everyone needs to find their niche and get into the mix right now, or, biblically, through prophecy, you will just reap judgment. If you don't want to be part of God's army, it means He will not protect you as a soldier. He will not give you weapons, and He will not feed you. And why should He do any of those? Because you're leaving people behind. You're just indifferent. You're just a hypocrite. And I'm speaking to myself again right now. So, it's time to get deadly serious about this and actually enact and step into whatever each and every one of us has as a calling before ourselves.
Excellent. Thank you, Brother Alan. Brother Kev, final comment.
Yeah, I say to all the listeners out there, just do your homework, take everything that we say here with caution and research it. And I think that you find your time being more fulfilling, and I think that once you become a researcher in the truth, it's a lifelong thing, and it's a beautiful relationship that you develop with God, and how He teaches you things, and I'm always in amazement sometimes when I've prayed for something and without even remember I prayed for it, there's the answer before me, whether it be in a book or a program or a friend that I meet, such as you, Zen and Alan. It's the scope of His love for us is undeniable, and it's uninhibited. And once you do find them, folks, most of the things that we talk about here, the controversial things, you'll be able to shake your head and direct yourself in the Scriptures where it talks about these things that we call fantasies and stories and of times of old and the UFO phenomenon, all the things that we talk about. You'll find all of those things in the Scriptures, just as we did. And just reach out. His hand is waiting to grab yours, and it's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Good work, Kevin.
Likewise. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us again. This Wednesday, I'm going to be a guest on Sci-Fi Radio. And on Thursday night at 10 p.m., I will be a guest of Minister Fortson. We're going to be talking about my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. Till next week, everybody, God bless. Thank you, brothers, for joining me.
I looked up at you and asked you about God and if He exists and if He's true, and wondered what would happen when someone dies. Is there a heaven? And what about that man up on the cross? The simple thoughts now. The only God you know is man. Are you saddened and ashamed to tell this little soul that you don't believe in anything and have no reason and no hope? There's no heaven and no meaning. There's no purpose to our lives. Did you believe we're just evolved, random mutations come alive? You know better than an insect, son, and when you die, that's it. I've learned through education that good and bad just don't exist. It's all just evolution. It's survival of the fittest. And we can get you a prescription when your life becomes depressed. I'm sorry that I've crumbled all your hopes and all your dreams, but it's time you realize that life's not what it seems. Are you lost? Are you alone? Are you convinced that life does not make sense? Have you forgotten that God even exists? Have you replaced all that was real for a life of benefit and created your own truth? A happy ending. Are you lost? Are you alone? Are you convinced that life does not make sense? Have you forgotten that God even exists? Have you replaced all that was real for a life of benefit and created your own truth? A happy ending. You realize your answers could just shatter all these dreams and everything that ever mattered to this precious little being who had belief in certain peace and received that inner voice inside his conscience. And his conscious mind believes, and it sickens you to think it's been driven by your ego and your greed. And he sees that you don't practice what you preach. You've lost your dignity and you've succeeded in destroying all beliefs and defeated all his real hopes and dreams. They might never be retrieved, and the flame within his heart almost completely is extinguished, and the holes within his soul are filled with mimics, and the message of God's grace within his mind has been diminished, because the answers that you gave him took a piece of his existence, and the power of your words were unforeseen, and in that very moment you destroyed the very purpose of his being, and now he's lost and alone, and he's convinced that life does not make sense, and he's forgotten that God